Everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to give you my best tips for the digital SAT reading section. So, before we jump to the tips, I'd like to say that you can prepare, like, if you ran out of materials specifically for the digital SAT, because I know that there are only four official tests on Bluebook and two PSATs on Bluebook. So, if you finished all six of them and you need more materials to practice, you can always use the old reading sections on Khan Academy or past papers. So, what I did was I finished these eight tests on Khan Academy and I practiced using this reading section on Khan Academy. So, you can also do that if you want. So, my tip number one, do not read the questions fully. And I know I say this a lot, but this is very important for saving time. Question types are repetitive on the digital SAT. Just look at the key phrases and answers. Do not read the whole question. So the key phrases that you may see are main idea, main function, underlined portion, overall structure, completes the text, undermine, support. So just by reading this part of the question, you can already know what to look for in a correct answer. You do not need to read the whole text, the whole question, I mean. Just read this small phrase, like main idea, for example. So basically, you should skip the repetitive filler phrases like most logically, most effectively, best, which choice, because it's already obvious that we need to pick the best choice or the most logical or most effective choice. And in the beginning of the question, they always ask, which choice, da 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 da. You can also skip this part which says which choice. And I know it might sound kind of weird, but saving at like even 1 second per question will result in additional 27 seconds at the end of the whole test. And you can use these 27 seconds to answer a whole question, which can boost your score by 10, 20, 30 points even. So this is very important in my opinion. So for example, what do I mean by filler phrases and key phrases? So let's look at the first question. Which choice best describes the overall structure of the text? Well, we probably wasted like 2 seconds or 3 seconds reading this question. A wise person would just look at the question, see the part which says overall structure, and know that he needs to find an answer choice which shows the overall structure of the text. So, which choice best describes the main idea of the text? We wasted time by reading this whole question. We could just see the part which says main idea and immediately know that we need to find the main idea. And with the third part, we see effectively illustrates the claim. So, a person who is ready for the test, who has practiced a lot, knows that the answer, that the prompt or the passage will have some kind of claim, and we need to find an answer choice which will illustrate that claim. So, illustrates the claim is the main part of this question. And we can answer this question just by reading these three words at the end. Illustrates the claim. You don't need to read anything before that. Which choice most logically completes the text? Just completes the text. We do not need the most logically or which choice part. Just completes the text. What completes the text? Which finding, if true, would most directly undermine Foster's hypothesis? We do not need to read this whole question. Just read this part. Undermine Foster's hypothesis. So, we need to find an answer which will undermine Foster's hypothesis. That's already clear if we just read the last three words. So, if you do this in every single question, you will save a ton of time. And this tip is the same for vocab questions, reading questions, and grammar questions and everything else. So that was a short tip. Now, real tips. Tip number two. Everything you need is in the passage. So you should never infer anything. And what do I mean by that? You should never try to make your own assumptions if it is not being asked in the question, of course. Well, if there's like a question where you need to pick the most logical continuation, you sometimes need to make your own assumptions. But When the question is straightforward, you should never make assumptions. If an answer choice has something not mentioned in the text, then it's already wrong, because you should never make assumptions in this kinds of text. The answer is almost always in the passage, but in different words. So basically, you need to find an answer choice which just paraphrases a specific portion of the passage. And you need to be able to do that quick. And to be able to do that quick, you need to practice a lot. After every answer choice, ask yourself, did I see this in the passage? If the answer to that question is no, then you can immediately skip that answer choice and mark it as wrong. Now, let's practice it a little bit. Let's look at this first question. Utah is home to Pando, a colony of about 47,000 quaking aspen trees that all share a single root system. Pando is one of the largest single organisms by mass on Earth, but ecologists are worried that its growth is declining in part because of grazing by animals. The ecologists say that strong fences could prevent deer from eating young trees and help Pando start thriving again. Now to the question, why are ecologists worried about Pando? You see, I didn't read the part which says according to the text because it's already obvious that it's according to the text. So I'm just going to read the second part. Why are ecologists worried about Pando? It's a very straightforward question. And if the question is straightforward, the answer choice must always 100% match with the question, with the prompt, with the passage. So you should never infer anything. And as I said, ask yourself, did I see this in the passage? So, A, it isn't growing at the same rate it used to. Did I see this in the passage? Of course I did. Its growth is declining. How can we say its growth is declining? In other words, its growth isn't at the same rate as it used to be. So, A is basically paraphrasing our passage. So it looks good. And in a real text, in a real test, I would not even bother reading B, C, and D because of the time pressure and I need to save a lot of time because I have practiced so much that I'm 100% confident that A is going to be the correct answer because it is basically paraphrasing what's being said in the prompt. But just for the sake of this video, let's look at B, C, and D. It isn't producing young trees anymore. Ask yourself, is there anything about young trees in the passage? Did you even see the word young in the passage? No, you didn't. Oh, wait, you did. Eating young trees. Yeah, okay, sorry. But there is nothing about the production of young trees. Is that right? Yeah. So we can safely eliminate B. C. It can't grow into new areas because it's blocked by fences. Well, just logically, is there anything about new areas in the passage? I know C is logically incorrect, but even if we remove that aspect, is there anything about new areas? Just let's read the question again. Colony above aspen trees share a single root system, largest single organisms, growth is declining, strong fences could prevent deer from eating young trees and helps thriving again. Anything about new areas? No, C is immediately wrong. Its root system can support many more trees. Is there anything about its root system not supporting new trees? Like, just ask yourself, did you encounter anything about that in the passage? No. So immediately D is incorrect. Now, let's look at the next question. Culinary anthropologist Vertamoy Smart Grosnever may be known for her decades of working in national public television and radio, but her book, Vibration Cooking, or The Travel Notes of a Geechee Girl, is likely her most influential project. The 1970 book, whose title refers to Smart Grosnever's roots in the Low County of South Carolina, was unusual for its time. It combined memoir, recipes, travel writing, and social commentary and challenged notions about conventions of food and cooking. Long admired by many, the book and its author have shaped contemporary approaches to writing about cuisine. Main idea. Okay, we need to look at the main idea. Smart Grosnover's unconventional book Vibration Cooking or the Travel Notes of a Guichi is an important contribution to food writing. Important contribution. What is being rephrased here? Important contribution is basically paraphrasing influential project. What does influential means? Influential means that there has been some kind of contribution, which is important, of course. So A is basically stating exactly what is said in the passage, but in different words. And that's what we're looking for. But let's look at B. Smart Christopher held many different positions over her life, including reporter and food writer. Well, uh, yeah, she did hold many different positions, but like, is that the main idea of the text, basically? It's being said only in the beginning of the passage. Is that even the main idea? No. And they say reporter. Yeah, maybe National Public Television means reporter, but that's also not 100% sure. So we can safely eliminate B because that's not the main idea at all. C. Smart Customer's groundbreaking book, Vibration Cookie. Okay, already there's a red flag. Groundbreaking. Now, this is a very strong adjective. And if we're going to use this kind of adjective in our answer choice, then there should be some kind of evidence. But even though it is a very influential project, there is no description of it being very like groundbreaking or on that level. But let's see. Or the travel notes of Gichiko didn't receive the praise it deserved. Now, ask yourself, did you see in the passage anything about it not receiving the praise it deserved? No, nothing like that. There was even nothing about praise deserved. Actually, it is like defying the passage. It is not saying like it's saying the opposite of what's being said in the passage. The passage says that it's long admired by many. There's nothing about it not receiving the praise it deserved. So we can eliminate C. D. Smart Christopher was a talented chef whose work inspired many people to start cooking for themselves. Yeah, her work inspired many people, but did it inspire them to start cooking for themselves? Is there anything in the passage about people cooking for themselves? Nothing like that. So don't even spend time thinking about this answer choice. It's immediately incorrect. Let's look at one of these examples. So 8 is kind of easy, so let's look at 9. Yeah, it's a bit challenging. It's a poem. So, the following text is from Ezra Pound's 1909 poem, Hymn 3, or is that ill? I don't know. Based on the work of Marcantino Flamino. And the question asks, in what way is the human mind like a flower? So basically, we're looking for similarities between the human mind and a flower. As a fragile and lovely flower unfolds its gleaming foliage on the breast of the fostering earth. Now, I'll give you a small tip. A lot of people are overwhelmed when they see a lot of hard words in poems, especially in poems. And that's why a lot of people struggle with poems. They see a lot of these old fashioned words and they start panicking. Well, the truth is that I don't understand these words either. But that doesn't prevent you from being able to understand the overall meaning of the passage. So, just continue reading. Don't worry about these old fashioned words. Most of the time, you don't even need to know them to answer the question correctly. Okay, as a fragile and lovely flower unfolds its gleaming foliage on the breast of the faltering earth, if the dew and the rain drove it forth. Now, let's stop for a second and understand what's being said. Well, they're basically saying that a flower, like, I don't know how to properly describe it in English, but like, when a flower opens up, why does it open up? It opens up because of rain, and it gets water from the rain, and flowers need water. Basically, that's the whole idea of that part. So doth my tender mind flourish, if it be fed with the sweet dew of the fostering spirit. Now, it may be a bit hard to understand, but here they are talking about the human mind. My tender mind flourish. So basically, they're saying, like, my tender mind will flourish if it is fed. with the sweet dew of the fostering spirit. So they're basically saying, like, just like a flower, if my mind is going to be fed with something, it will also flourish. A flower will flourish if it is fed with water from rain, and my mind will also flourish if it's fed with something. Lacking this, it beginneth straightway to languish, even as a floweret born upon dry earth, if the dew and rain tended not. And again, if my mind is gonna lack this kind of, like, how to say, food for the mind, it will become like it will not be able to flourish, just like a flower which doesn't get rain. That's the whole idea of the passage. And you don't even need to understand the hard, old fashioned, challenging words. Now, let's look at the answer choices. A. It becomes increasingly vigorous with the passage of time. First of all, is there anything about the passage of time? Is there like a course of action or like a defined a defined period of time in the passage? It is already a red flag. We did not see anything about a defined period of time in the passage. Also, there's nothing about the flower or the human mind becoming vigorous. Is that right? So, it doesn't match with the passage at all. Don't even bother thinking about it anymore. Just immediately cross it out. A is gone. B. It draws strength from changes in the weather. Is there anything about it drawing strength from the changes in weather? The only thing related to weather is rain here. And it's not even in the context of weather, it's in the context of food for the flower. And also, there is nothing about the human mind gaining strength because of the changes in weather. Like, it is illogical just by looking at the passage. It is completely logical, so B is incorrect. C, it requires proper nourishment in order to thrive. This is 100% correct. Proper nourishment to thrive. It's basically paraphrasing. Flourish, thrive. Proper nourishment. If it be fed with something. Feeding is like nourishment, in other words. They're basically saying what's being said in the passage. The D looks really good. Let's look at D. It perseveres despite challenging circumstances. Anything about perseverance, anything about challenging circumstances in the passage? Nothing like that. Nothing. So we can safely eliminate D. So C is the correct answer. And okay, let's skip to the next tip. Tip number 3. Understand that only one and only one answer is correct and the three other answers are incorrect. Yeah, this sounds pretty straightforward. But understanding this concept was a game changer when I was preparing myself. You should understand, like deeply understand and firmly understand that an answer can be correct only if it's 100% correct. If you are going to be confident in this fact by 100%, you will be very quick at eliminating incorrect choices and noticing, finding, locating incorrect choices. The moment you encounter something which isn't in the passage or defies the passage, and this is a continuation of the last tip basically, you should immediately eliminate that choice without even reading the rest of it. And you should just build confidence because a lot of people are like, well, yeah, this might not be in the passage, but let me continue reading and maybe I will see something. No, that's weak. You should never do that. The instant you notice something that's not in the passage, you should immediately just cross that answer out. Say bye bye. Okay, let's see what I mean. Uh, Main idea. Okay. In 1934, physicist Eugene Wigner posited the existence of a crystal consisting entirely of electrons in a honeycomb-like structure. The so-called Wigner crystal remained largely conjecture, however, until Feng Wang and colleagues announced in 2021 that they had captured an image of one. The researchers trapped electrons between two semiconductors and then cooled the apparatus, causing the electrons to settle into a crystalline structure. By inserting an ultra thin sheet of graphene above the crystal, the researchers obtained an impression, the first visual confirmation of the Wigner crystal or Wiener crystal, doesn't matter. Now, answer choices. A. Researchers have obtained the most definitive evidence to date of the existence of the Wigner crystal. To be honest, that sounds quite okay. Let's continue reading. Like, there is no immediate red flag. B. Researchers have identified an innovative new method for working with unusual crystalline structures. Already, red flag. Crystalline structures. So they're implying that the passage has a lot of structures. But the only structure we're talking about is the honeycomb like structure. There's nothing about other structures. Like, even if we eliminate the illogical aspect of this answer, because there is nothing about innovative new methods for working with unusual crystalline structures. Even if we eliminate that aspect, this small, like this single letter S is the thing that we can use to eliminate this question. Okay, this answer choice. Structures implies that there are a lot of structures being discussed in the passage, but that's not the case. So we can safely eliminate B. Let's look at C. Graphene is the most important of the components required to capture an image of a Wigner crystal. Yes, there is evidence that graphene is a part of the process, but is there anything about it being the most important? Like, as soon as I read graphene is the most important of the components, I can safely eliminate this answer choice because there's nothing in the passage about graphene being the most important part of this. So C is incorrect. Don't even bother reading the rest in a real test. It's difficult to acquire an image of a Wigner crystal because of the crystal's honeycomb structure. Um, is there anything about the difficulty? Like, yeah, there is evidence that it has been largely conjecture and that the evidence was found only in 2021. And we might assume that it's difficult. But obviously, like straight in the passage, is there anything about it being very difficult to acquire specifically because of its honeycomb structure? No, nothing about that. There's just evidence that there is a crystal consisting entirely of electrons in a honeycomb like structure. But there's nothing about the crystal being very hard to, like the image of the crystal being very hard to acquire because of the honeycomb structure. Nothing like that in the passage. So we can safely eliminate D also, and the correct answer will be A. Okay, why was Wong and his team's discovery of the Pteropterus something fossil significant? I'm not even gonna try to read that. Basically, why is the discovery important? For many years, the only existing fossil evidence of Mixopterid europterids, an extinct family of large aquatic arthropods known as sea scorpions and related to modern arachnids and horseshoe crabs, came from four species living on the paleocontinent of Laurasia or Laurasia, doesn't matter, in a discovery that expands our understanding of the geographical distribution of Mixopterids. Paleontologist Bo Wang and others have identified fossilized remains of a new Mixopterid species, Pteropterus, I don't know, that lived over 400 million years ago on the paleocontinent of Gondwana. Okay, we read the passage. Now let's move on to the answer choices. A. The fossil constitutes the first evidence found by scientists that Mixopterus lived more than 400 years ago. Is there anything about Mixopterus living more than 400 million years ago? We're talking about the location, not the date. Even a baby can understand it. So A is completely incorrect. You can safely eliminate A. B. The fossil helps establish that Mixopterids are more closely related to modern arachnids and horseshoe crabs than previously thought. Okay. Is there anything about the relationship of Mixopterids to modern arachnids in the passage? Like anything about the relationship? Nothing about that in the passage. We can safely eliminate B. C. The fossil helps establish a more accurate timeline of the evolution. Immediately, I'll eliminate this answer choice. More accurate timeline of evolution. Is there anything about the timeline of evolution? Is there anything about time in the passage? Yes, there is something about time, but is there anything specific about, like, is there anything important about time? We're only given a fact that something lived over 400 million years ago. But is there anything of, like, is there anything about a timeline? Like, happened at this time, then at that time, then at that time. Is there anything about the timeline? Is there anything about the evolution of Mixopterids? No. We can eliminate that. Now let's look at D. The fossil constitutes the first evidence found by scientists that Mixopterids existed outside the polycontinent of Laurasia. Yes, this is correct, because it has been previously thought that they live in Laurasia. But then, there has been a discovery which expands our understanding of the geographical distribution of Mixopterids, because they found remains that live in Gondwana, outside Laurasia, in Gondwana. Basically the same thing. That's why D is the correct answer choice. Next question. Support the hypothesis. Okay, so we know that there is some hypothesis and we need to support it. Clear as that. In the mountains of Brazil, Barbikinia tomentosa and Barbikinia macrantha, two plants in the Veloci family, established themselves on soilless, nutrient-poor patches of quartzite rock. Okay, so the rock is soilless and it's nutrient-poor. It doesn't have many nutrients. Plant ecologists Anna and Patricia used microscopic analysis to determine that the roots of tomentosa and macrantha, which grow directly into the quartzite, have clusters of fine hairs near the root tip. Further analysis indicated that these hairs secrete both malic and citric acids. So they have some hairs on the roots which secrete malic and citric acids. The researchers hypothesize, most important part, hypothesize. And remember that we need to give an answer choice which supports this. That the researchers hypothesized that the plants depend on dissolving underlying rock with these acids, as the process not only creates channels for continued growth. So, it's not only used for growing into the rock, but also releases phosphates that provide the vital nutrient phosphorus. Okay, we read the passage. Now let's look at the answer choices. Other species in the villa. Okay, already. Other species in the family. Is there anything in the passage about other species in that family? Anything? Like, you don't even need to read the rest of the answer choice. Is there anything about other species in the Velociaceae family, except Tomentosa and Macrantha? Nothing about that. Nothing mentioned about other species. Safely eliminate A. Get out of here. B. Though Tomentosa and Macrantha both secrete malic and citric acids, each species produces the acid in different proportions. Anything in the passage about the proportions of acid that they secrete? Are they comparing the secretion of the acid of Tomentosa and Macrantha? No, nothing like that. Safely eliminate B. Horrible answer choice. C. The roots of Tomentosa and Macrantha carve new entry points into rocks even when cracks in the surface are readily available. Now, this is a very challenging answer choice because the passage says that the secretion of these acids not only provides channels for continued growth, but also releases phosphates. And it might be logical that they carve new entry points, even when cracks in the surface are readily available, to release phosphates. This is a very hard, how to say, assumption. And remember, in questions which ask about assumption, it is okay to logically assume things, to kind of try to infer things from your own logic. So, from our own logic, yeah, this answer choice is supported by the passage. A and B were not supported by the passage at all, but C is supported Because ask yourself, if you're not sure about the answer, ask yourself, why would they carve these new entry points even when cracks are readily available? Why? To release phosphates, because this is a vital nutrient. Let's look at D. Tomentosa and Macrantha thrive even when transferred to surfaces of rocks that do not contain phosphates. Anything about rocks that do not contain phosphates, or anything about Momentosa and Macrantha thriving in different surfaces, nothing about that in the passage. So even if you did not understand C at all, just by reading A, B, and D, just by being very straightforward and following the tip, just by reading A, B, and D, you can safely eliminate all three of them. And the only answer choice you'll be left with is C. And you can confidently safely pick C as your correct answer choice. Okay, uh, let's try this last one. Logically completes the text. Ancestral Puebloans, the civilization from which present day Pueblo tribes descended, emerged as early as 1500 BCE in an area of what is now the southwestern United States and dispersed suddenly in the late 1200 CE, abandoning established villages with systems for farming crops and turkeys. Okay, so basically, they lived in some kind of place and then they dispersed and they abandoned their villages with systems of farming crops and turkeys. Recent analysis comparing Turkey remains at Mesa Verde, one such village. What village are they referring to? The villages that they abandoned. So Mesa Verde is like a village that they abandoned. In southern Colorado, to samples. A recent analysis comparing Turkey remains at Mesa Verde, one such village in southern Colorado, to samples from modern Turkey populations in Rio Grande Valley. So modern means after they already dispersed, after they moved to different places. So they were at Mesa Verde, then they moved to Rio Grande Valley. Modern Turkey populations at Rio Grande Valley of north central New Mexico determined that the latter birds, so the ones at Rio Grande Valley, descended in part from turkeys cultivated at Mesa Verde. So there is a connection, which shared genetic markers appearing only after 1280. So after they dispersed. Okay. Thus, researchers concluded that. Okay, let's look at A. Conditions of the terrains had greater similarities in the past than they do today. Is there anything about the similarities of conditions of terrains? Is there anything about terrains in the passage? Like, I'm not even sure, but I'm not even going to be surprised if there is, like, if the word terrains doesn't even appear in that passage. Personally, I didn't see anything about terrains and their conditions and the similarities of the terrains and it having some kind of connection to turkeys. So A is horrible. Bye bye. B. Some ancestral Puebloans migrated to the Rio Grande Valley in the late 1200s and carried farming practices with them. In the late 1200s. And they said only after 1280. After 1280, late 1200s. Basically paraphrasing what's being said in the passage. And they carried farming practices with them. What are they implying? Well, since the since the turkeys have similarities, genetic similarities, it is logical that some of them actually carried farming practices from the villages that they abandoned. Because if they did carry them, there would be genetic similarities, and there are genetic similarities if you read the passage. So B looks good so far. There is no obvious red flag which defies the passage. So C. Let's look at C. Indigenous people living in the Rio Grande Valley primarily planted crops and did not cultivate turkeys before 1280. Anything about them planting crops, anything about planting crops, anything about indigenous people planting crops and not cultivating turkeys before 1280. Nothing about that in the passage. Horrible answer choice. Eliminate immediately. Like you should like it like you should how to say be confident that only one answer is correct and the answer is going to be correct only if it's 100% correct. So even if you see a small very minute detail which doesn't correlate to the passage, Just immediately eliminate that answer choice confidently. And to build confidence, you need to practice. So C is incorrect. D. The ancestral problems of the Mesoverde likely adopted the farming practices of indigenous people living in the other regions. As I said, other regions. Anything about other regions in the passage. Anything about indigenous people of the other regions. Like, just ignore the first part of the answer choice. Look at the second part. Indigenous people living in other regions. Did we see anything about indigenous people living in other regions? Nothing like that in the passage. If you do not believe me, read it again. Nothing like that. D immediately eliminated, which leaves B as the only correct answer choice. So, thanks for watching this video, guys, and have a great day. I hope it was helpful. And if it was helpful, share it with your friends, and subscribing and liking would be good. Bye bye.